good morning, everybody, and welcome into the half. My name is Eric Campbell. You can find me at ericcampbell.com. And as you can see, today we are without our good friend Aaron Montgomery. Unfortunately, it is the kind of day where you have to just kind of roll with the punches. And being without Aaron, this means I am definitely going to be looking for you guys to jump in and comment and get live with me. So if you have stuff you want to talk about, if you have questions you want to ask about, specifically about embroidery, would be fantastic. No problem there. But anything in the apparel decoration world, anything you want to discuss on that kind of front, I would love to have you guys in. So, one of these times, like I said, we have had these days where things go wrong. You just have to keep on rolling. This is one of those days where you end up with everything goes wrong. You just have to kind of keep to your schedule. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. You may have seen earlier, we had the two regular guys show come on, and I did not end up having our guest, wonderful guest Eve Lowry from the Baby's Booty, could not come on for technical difficulties. But this is something that has happened to us before. So me and Aaron, Aaron was out. He's out right now, dealing with some issues with his dad at the hospital. And we ended up just doing a show with me and Terry Combs, just talking about stuff, doing things today. But what it looks like is I may have a special guest. I did a last minute call to say, hey, I'm looking to make mistakes and do something live. And I did a last call over at the Embroidery Nerds Discord channel. And you may know this person from the Embroidery Nerd. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in before we say hi, everybody. We have a special guest. We have Jeff from the Embroidery Nerd.
Here's Hello.
Jeff. Man.
I was debating as you were introducing me, should I just hit the close button and bail?
If you bailed, that would have been totally fine, because that has been the watchword of the day is just keep going no matter what happens.
Yeah. I saw that you guys were doing the show and that the guest wasn't there. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, well, you know what? This sometimes happens. I'm sure you've had this before. She kept on trying to come on. She first comes on and says, like, I'm not at the house. I can't get there in time. So I'm trying to go for the car. And we're like, okay, we'll stall for time. We'll make that happen. Gets to the house and still nothing is connecting. Nothing's right. But I mean, you've done live work before. You do it all the time. You do it every week. I'm sure you know sometimes you're just on the hook.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely those panic moments that you're like, I'm going to have to reboot the network. I'm going to have to reboot my computer. I'm going to have to reboot the light bulbs and everything else just to be able to get going on live. And you're 6 minutes late thinking people are going to hang me.
Yep, right. It's a slightly different way to go. But by the way, thank you very much, Jeff, for jumping in, because we had no preparation. Literally, I'm going to let you guys know Jeff's being a hero here, because I said quite seriously on the Discord, I'm like, hey guys, I got 5 minutes and I'm feeling cute. Somebody want to jump in and just do this live without any sort of preparation? And so Jeff has been good enough to jump in. So yeah, that's thank you very much, Jeff. Because I'm sure we have some stuff though. Let's go ahead and grab some comments. We have people who are jumping in. We always say hi to everybody on the half. That is what we're here to do. So Ramona, both of our friends here, going solo. I hope things are going well for today. Actually, looks like I'm not entirely solo. Thank you, Jeff. So that's great. Now, Ramona does say, however, I was going to ask Aaron about sublimation printers, but it will wait. It may have to.
I recommend the one that uses the least expensive ink.
And here's what I'm going to say. Everybody always kind of gets on my case because I ran Sawgrass printers. I ran the classic Sawgrass kind of desktop printers, the SG printers. But let's say this, if you are going to have that print head dry out every 2 seconds, if you're using the large, because we had a wide format printer that I got this close to converting. But I'm like, we do not sublimate enough for me to not dry out that ink head. So I was like, all right, if I'm going to dry my print heads out, pay a little bit more with those gel-based inks and run them, because at least every time I started the printer back up, it's still printed. Which was a lot better. There is that. So there may be some reasons to do that. Mike is in saying, hey, Mike, happy to have you on here. Crystal's on saying, hey. Ramona's super excited. Jeff, hello. There's Ramona, so thank you. And Yosta also coming in from Sweden. Wow. Hi, Jeff. See, look at that. I'm telling you, you're absolutely a fan favorite. Justin, of course, also the embroidery nerd. Your other half looks different today. He does. Yeah, I'm going to say it. By the way, I'm not as good as Aaron at pointing. If you guys don't know, the cameras are reversed. So when we do this, every time we have to stop and think in our head which direction, and you point the wrong direction every time. So
I have cues up there that help me point the right direction.
This is smart. See, I have to do this every time. If you guys don't know, I'm using green screen, as you are aware. I'm not laying on a machine right now. I'm not just like reclining on a ZSK multi-head machine as we talk. But every time I do this, when I first start up, sometimes the green screen is misaligned. I have to stop and point real quick and go, okay, that's the direction where it's not aligned correctly before I start working. So that kind of happens. Christine says, I was wondering who the co-host would be today. Well, luckily it's Jeff. And so like I said, embroidery questions, patch questions, stuff like that. Embroidery nerd questions. Jump in today. It's the day for it. Uh, Justin says, kind of looks like a guy I know. I think probably, yeah, very likely. Very likely. I would have jumped in, but I don't have much of a voice right now. Justin's been sick, so everybody wish Justin the best so that he is feeling better as soon as he can be. And a couple more people in. Let's go ahead and grab. Bob says, watching from rainy Folly Beach today. Not rainy at all here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, just on fire. I would love to tell you that's not true, but our bosque, which is the kind of forest that runs along the Rio Grande River, is currently on fire, not very far from here. So, yeah, been a rough time for New Mexicans right now.
I believe it.
Mike says, my converted Epson has been working quite well, even with extended breaks. That is good to know. I would love to know about your ink formulation because, man, I had in the early days of converting those printers, I had a big Epson like 9800, and we had some rough luck with those printers. That is why we started desktop sublimation on those little SGs. But it doesn't mean that, like I said, the per print costs go way down once you go to these converted printers. But
Yeah,
not
I
everybody's doing
know
that stuff.
mine. I've gone like 6 months without printing anything, and it prints, and you go. I mean, it cleans the print heads. And I was told by sublimators that you should just print more because it uses less ink for printing than it does to clean the print heads.
I've told people that before too. It's like when you're having these machines sitting laying fallow all this time, if you've got extra production time, run off a couple of sublimated samples and put them in any order that's going out because you're going to use that ink. Like you said, you're going to use that ink for cleaning anyway. Yes, you got a little press time. Yes, you have your transfer costs. Chalk that up to marketing or make shop shirts. If you're somebody who's in a shop where you've got employees there, there's no reason for them not to be wearing shop apparel. They should be able to have some free shop apparel. In fact, what we often did, today we talked about this on Two Regular Guys, and I don't know if I'm sure you've had some of this before. As an embroiderer, you've stitched over somebody else's logo. You've made a patch that goes over a logo. Right?
Oh yeah.
We've all done it, but nobody necessarily talks about it. But somebody has brought you a garment where it's like, I just changed jobs and this jacket costs more than I want it to, and I want another patch on it for the new job I'm in. In the real estate game, I had a lot of people who switched between real estate companies, and all of their outerwear had several times the patch removed and a new patch added because they were switching companies. So something that I wanted to talk about with that, it's like when we were doing that for employees, we would have reject garments that were still good, had something wrong with the print, had something with the embroidery that was wrong, and we would offer to them like, "Hey, if you want a shop garment out of this," because they wouldn't want to take them off the line. I'm like, "If you'll let us put a patch with the shop logo on it, you can take the garment because we're going to reject that thing anyway. We'll put the shop logo on it, throw a patch on it, and out the door you go." But the thing is, I'm seeing more and more people doing that as a matter of course for normal decorating. I mean, you seeing kind of this reuse kind of resale market increasing where you're coming from? Have you seen some of that?
I have seen it. I mean, in fact, I'm getting brought, I think it's like 12 hats that I'm going to put patches over right now because they changed their logo and they don't want to buy new hats. So we'll sew patches on them. But I don't know. It kind of seems to go in waves. Like the big, big hat patch, rectangular, kind of like Aaron Draplin does.
Yes,
those come in style and then they kind of go out of style and people want really small logo on the bottom left.
Yep.
And it just it depends on kind of the, I don't know, fashion.
Yeah. Well, it is.
All of a sudden decide this is really, really cool. We need this. And then everybody needs it. And then it changes to something else.
I don't know. It's like having gone through these waves. Every time I talk to someone about this, now here's what I will say though. Everybody who thinks patches are going to go away, that patches have been part of the embroidery scene for so long, since the big Shifley machine, since the inception of embroidery as a commercial object. So patches themselves not going away. Where we put them and how big they are and where they are on particular garments definitely changes over time. And I remember these cycles of like, no one would wear a trucker hat at all. When I first came in, 6-panel only, curved bill, fitted hat only. There were no truckers. Then there was an entire period. I was alive, sadly, and decorating during kind of that Von Dutch first run trucker hat period when I was really young. And it's like mesh back truckers, foam fronts, 5 panels everywhere. And it was hilarious because at the shop that I was at, the shop had already been running for so long that we were like, we got a bunch of that stuff in stock sitting somewhere on a shelf, dust it off, call it, shelf supply vintage. And out the door it went. Or the ones that have like the braid. I remember
Oh
that
yeah.
being the death knell for a hat. If it had a braid on the front, like what old man hat is that? And then suddenly it was like, oh yeah, no, custom braid on
Yep.
the front now. These things come and go in waves, and like I said, the same thing with the flat caps. We had all these snapbacks, and the bill had to be absolutely zeroed out flat. People were upset if you had to bend it for the process of getting it behind the head. And now I saw this guy on TikTok not the other day where they were selling a 3D printed jig to put the curve into the bill. It just comes and goes in waves. And same thing with this kind of reuse. But I think we may be heading for a larger cycle of this reuse mending period. I feel like that's coming on to us pretty quickly. And it looks like from, like I said, I did an article this morning that I shared with everybody. I'll go ahead and just put the link up for that if I can in a second here. I showed this article where they're talking about the next 5 years, massive increases in this resale stuff. So this is the article, bit.ly/second sale with a 2 on that second, if you want to check it out. They're talking about massive increases in resale. I mean, massive percentages of increase in resale. And we're talking to companies like REI and clothing companies coming out with their own resale shops within their stores.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, as I always say, we'll see stuff in retail, and then it bleeds into our business over time, and that cycle is shorter and shorter. Used to be months before something bled into our business. Now it's, if it comes out online that week, somebody asks you for it.
Yeah, they're like, "Have you seen this?" "No." "What? Can you send me
Yep.
a link?" But
It's always like what, like somebody's Instagram post for the first time that's ever been shared, and they're like, "You know how to do this, right?"
yeah, uh-huh. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. No.
No, but we'll figure it out.
No. I've noticed, and I think it goes hand in hand with the inflation that we're seeing, because we're right
Yeah,
now we have inflation,
yeah,
we have supply chain. I mean,
yeah.
I hate to say we still have supply chain, but we still do
Of
to
course.
some point. And so that's pushing people, they're like, I either have to go buy a new piece of clothing
Yeah.
that's decorated and I'm
Mhm.
going to pay a lot, or you know what, I've got this t-shirt over here that I just love, but it's faded. I want something vinyl over the top of it. And I think it's just right now, if you can hammer that repurpose reuse market, I think it's going to
Yeah.
be really, really big, just because of the inflation.
Yeah. Well, I think the great thing, like I said, with embroiderers, we're lucky because we are used to this. This is not weird. I mean,
Yep.
I think that's the thing. It has not been weird for us to cover a logo with a patch, not for a very long time. My
Yeah.
my very first work, I can remember within my first few months having done that, of doing this job. So quite obviously, covering something up with a patch is not weird for us, and I think that it's a lot easier to stomach it with outerwear.
Oh yeah, by far.
Jackets, hats, people are used to having the concept of adding a patch to it. It's not that weird. So
Or
I
those
think,
really, like, heavy
yeah,
shop shirts,
yeah,
something button
oh yeah,
that "My name's Jeff," it goes right here. Everybody knows
yes,
that classic black text on white with the black border
yep, yep.
stuck on there.
Personalization on patches. Once again, if you ever thought patches are going to go somewhere, the classic mechanics shirt patch has been around forever. It will still be around forever. That one is just not going away. And I'll
No.
tell you this, I remember shops where they had uniform programs. Literally, the uniforms did not belong to the mechanics that they were on. And if they left the shop, somebody else who was that size was going to get that uniform. They were going to take the name patch off it and pass it along.
I
So,
mean,
I
they
mean,
wouldn't even take them home to
no,
to launder them. They had a
yeah,
basket that you would, at the end of the day, you'd take your shirt off, you'd toss it in the basket, and it would
yep,
go to be laundered somewhere else. If a shirt got damaged, they'd just replace it,
yep.
and you never even saw it.
Oh, and I'm telling you the thing that I've saw even before all this happened, while I'm still doing full on commercial embroidery, I had people coming in with vintage gear where they wanted me to match decoration styles and add a new personalized name patch for it. So somebody, the one I remember really distinctly, guy came in and he was in the film industry for a long time. And he happened to have a jacket from the 70s from this really popular, the guy, this guy who did, I think he brought in animals for movies, and he did like training of horses. And this guy's company was like very well known in his part of the movie scene. And he got a vintage jacket from this guy's company. He's like, bring it in. I want you to match the script from this and put my logo on a patch with my name on it, like I worked at this guy's thing in the 70s. So this is a satin jacket. The embroidery on the back is like crazy hand guided stuff plus some machine stuff. It was like they had done two different pieces. Part of it was done on a chain stitch machine. Part of the names were done on a classic embroidery machine, probably like a Meistergram. And
Yeah.
so this guy brings us in, and when we do this cover patch for it, And the funny thing is, like, we did that, and that was weird at the time, and now I'm seeing people asking about that all the time when they're matching fonts. A bunch of it used to be you're matching fonts because you've got something corporate. And don't get me wrong, um, I've made lots of corporate match fonts or things that are from companies that do personalization. Pottery Barn. Um, don't ask, but you're going to see more from me on that even in the future. Suffice it to say, there are things like that that we did, but there's more people who have these kind of cool vintage things that they want to then bring their own personalization to. And I think there's a market for that. I know everybody says, like, is there a market for these one-off pieces? If you charge correctly, yes, there absolutely is.
Oh yeah. You know, the one that kills me that I get brought to me, and it seems to
Yeah.
like 4 times a year. It's every quarter somebody
Yep.
brings this in. It's usually a hand-guided chain stitch font on an old style Letterman sweater or Letterman jacket.
Uh,
And they're like, I really liked how this looked. Here is my new Letterman's jacket. And I want you to stab it
yeah.
thousands of times with an embroidery machine, but I want it to look like this chain stitch hand guided font
Yeah.
with, island coil all the way around. It's, oh
Of
no.
course.
Yep.
Of course. And honestly, there's a business for that. If you guys haven't been on Instagram or TikTok ever, go out there and trust me, there are people out there with, you know, cornley machines and old school singers and who have the chain stitch machines who are just doing hand guided. They're doing the crank island coil. They're doing the whole bit by
Yep.
hand, and they're making tremendous amounts of money doing that hand guided stuff. Uh, I I don't know that I'm seeing a rise necessarily. I will say this: more people in the last couple of years have asked me about commercial chenille machines that do the actual chain stitching
Yep.
than I have seen in a while. There are more people asking about chenille patches, and not just chenille, not just the classic loop pile patch, but also chain stitch, but digitizing for that than I've seen in a while. So I think that's coming, and also certainly, and God's both of us know this very well. Doing lots of things with motifs and techniques to try and get some of that look has
Yep.
become common now. That
Oh yeah.
used to be rare. It used to be weird to see somebody in the commercial world using motifs for anything.
Yep.
I remember a long time ago, it was always like it's straight stitch and satin stitch and fill stitch. Those are the stitches we got, and those are the ones we're going to use. That is it. But
I mean,
now it is way more common.
I've
Mhm.
sat at my computer and looked at something that I've, hand digitized, and I stare at it and go, how can I motif this so that I
Yes,
can easily reproduce it later?
yes, 100%. Because when you're doing this stuff by hand, that's where you get into the art project world. And I've said this a million times. It's super hard not to do. If you love this industry and you love making this stuff, you want to make something cool, you're going to start making art projects. You're going to forget about how much things cost on your end. Like, what is your time investment into
Yep.
these pieces? And you have to be very careful not to get into that territory where it's not profitable, but you can use those shortcuts and tools to make that stuff happen.
I
I mean,
mean,
I
it
think it's
really helps
unreal.
with like your Instagram and your Facebook. You do something really kind of crazy, different.
Yeah.
One of the very first things I did, I was asked by a company. They wanted
Mhm.
me to do a hat design, 2 inches. They wanted it to be different, fun, beachy feel.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so I did I'd been taking a lot of classes from Lee on color blending, and so I ended up putting a hibiscus flower
Mm.
with all the color blending stuff that I learned from Lee on the front of
Okay.
this hat. And the company didn't like it, but I threw that thing on Instagram, and I got a lot of traction off of that. People were like, "This is a really unique thing to put on a hat." I was like, "Thanks." You want something else? Because I'll sell you
Totally.
something else. And I'd put that. I'd sew that on a hat for them too. But it's when you give your customer something that's just a little bit different. Like when you guys are talking about doing ornaments, right?
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
ornaments for a company that was local to me. I walked in there and handed it to her, and she was like, "How did you do this? I mean, I know that's what you do. You do embroidery, but how did you do this?" And it
Mhm.
turned into, what else can you do?
Absolutely. Every time somebody tells me, like, you're doing all this wild stuff, why are you doing this weird stuff? Don't get me wrong. Most of my work over the course of my life, and even to the stock stuff I'm doing now as assets, most of it is standard. It is fonts, it is fill and satin and straight, and that's it. And sometimes some manuals when you're feeling frisky. Like, it's not more than that most of the time. Most Joe's Plumber logos are going to be like that. However, some of the biggest clients, some of the best clients I've had, even if they do that standard kind of work, come in because they look at a piece and go, if you can do this cool thing, I trust you with my logo, even though their logo is a super standard logo type. Like,
Yeah.
it's surprising how many times that you showing your creativity is like, oh, I trust this person because they do it. I've shown people these jacket backs, and I know you guys know the same ones that I've shown a lot of the time because honestly, if I look over my career, the number of times I've been asked to do a super detailed, crazy painterly style jacket back is very small compared to the number, literal thousands of left chest bog standard logos that I've done.
Yep.
But we show those big pieces because that's what gets people interested in embroidery as a medium. It shows our skills, and then people, like that stuff. That's what people do. So I mean, it's people. I hate to say this. This is the thing that I always do in my classes too. I say, all right, no customers here, right? Right. I'm going to whisper this. No customers here. Customers have no idea what they want. They're 85% of them don't have a creative bone in their body. If you don't show it to them, they don't know that it exists.
Yep.
You're there to show them the options. Like that's just what it is. Let me bring in a couple of customer customer
Bring in
comments.
the customers.
Bring in some customers. Let's grill those customers with what they actually want. Let's bring in some comments. We have a couple good ones here. So, and I'll start with this from Ramona. She's gonna put you on the spot, Jeff, slightly. So maybe a test print daily or weekly to keep your print going. What do you do for keeping your sublimation printer happy?
So what they told me is I do it every other day. I
Okay.
print something.
Mhm.
And even if it's just a small print, but what they told me is you print that off and you stick it in one of those big Ziploc bags with the little thing of desiccant in there, and
Mhm.
you can store those prints for almost up to a year.
Yep.
So if it's something that, I know I'm going to reprint eventually, I can print off that print now and stick it somewhere cool and dry and store it until I actually need it.
Yep, we did a very similar thing at our shop. We made prints up ahead of time. Because once again, had a piece that we did. We did a real estate show for a particular company that we did every year, twice a year, and some of those pieces were sublimated. And if I had to print off extra, or honestly, if I had more room, because that's the other thing too, we're nesting a bunch of stuff together. You're trying to get the most out of your twill, the most out of whatever you're cutting. I
Yep.
would throw something extra on to nest it in and to do more prints. So yeah, same kind of thing. Storing those things is possible. Just got to control your humidity a little bit. It's just how it is.
I
We have a
know we
couple of
think
other
all
ones.
this stuff is like on demand. You
Yeah.
got your vinyl cuts, you got your
Yeah.
ETF. Everybody thinks I'm making that transfer and I'm going to
Right
transfer it.
now. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would be surprised how long you can stick that thing on the shelf.
Oh
It's
yeah, totally. Oh, and the other thing I'm going to say is sometimes the efficiencies of scale make things work out differently too. When I've ordered patches, very rarely am I ordering the patches by having a patch company do something for me, which is not always the way. A lot of it's small run in house. The really large orders, we'll put it this way, especially back in the day where minimums aren't the way they are now. If somebody wanted 200 patches, but I could order 500 and be getting that same amount and be profitable, I would order 500 patches, sell them 250, wait for them to get the other 250 or offer them a deal on an expanded buy.
because they're going to come back and say it needs to match exactly.
Good thing because it's going to match exactly because I
Yep.
already ordered the other half of your order. that's sometimes the economies of scale work out to those prices being okay. And honestly, the customer's not unhappy. And somebody says, "Oh, that's dishonest." They knew what they were paying for. You told them exactly what it costs, and you took the incentive to say, "All right, if I have this produced by somebody else, we have enough lead time. When I'm having a large patch company produce this stuff, I can afford those extra patches as part of that deal." It
Yep.
just makes things easier for everybody. Yes, that means you spend a little less and make a little more money. Like I always tell people, if the customer wants you to be there in 6 months, they should want you to make money.
Yeah.
That's
And
they
you're taking the risk too. That is a
yeah.
risk that they don't
Oh
come
yeah.
back. And now you've got 300 patches that you now have to patch over.
Oh yeah. And believe me, if you want to think that I have never had some extra patches around, I have. I have had the chance where you suddenly go, all right, so hey guys, I have these patches from your order you did last time. I have patches just similar to that one. You want the rest of this order or not? And I have even handed them off for free at a couple of times. But you know what? It doesn't happen as much as people come back from. Most of the time, if you knew the customer, it's not something you're doing for your first customer ever, your first
Yeah.
interaction with the customer. This is someone you have to know they're coming back. But
Yeah.
we have a couple more great comments here, so I'm gonna bring these in before we get done. Justin says, "I ripped the back of one of my favorite jackets this past winter. I have to figure out a cool patch or applique to cover the hole." Yes, I love to do. The other thing I like to do is use especially on dark colors, which I often wear dark colors, black backing, black cutaway backing, and then I use a light fill or something to put it all together and keep the ragged edges of whatever's torn out of the way, and then stitch on top of that. It works pretty well. But yeah, patches and applique for covering holes, why not? Especially on expensive garments. I think it's cool. It's a cool way to do it. Visible mending is a trend. Go look it up. People are doing really cool stuff with it. What I love is that also comes out of old traditions like sashiko. If you guys know traditional sashiko stitching, that is a visible mending kind of technique. So cool stuff is
Yep.
out there.
It's pretty cool. Like if you do sashiko on a garment
Mm-hmm.
with the embroidery machine, it's so much. Like you would think I need to put structural thread in this. No,
No.
no.
No. Sashiko stitching has been around a long time, and those patterns do very well for holding together layers of material. They
Yep.
really do. So it's something to look at. If you haven't looked that up, look up Sachiko. It's really cool. It's something worthwhile to check out. Ramona says, my stepdaughter is exploring the rework of previously owned garments, purchased a thrift store, and created something different with it. This is this is going on with companies. This is the thing that stunned me. I was watching fashion companies buying up their own thrifted garments and decorating on them. So buying up thrifted garments from their own brand from previous runs and decorating on them and publishing that, going out there and saying, check it out, look at we're eco-friendly now. If a company can do it, you can do it too. Thrift is not a bad word anymore. In fact, that link that I sent out earlier, we're seeing a larger number of people, especially younger demographics, who always thrift when they're shopping, or at least have thrift as one of their options always. So thrift
And
stores are not a dirty word.
that new cutting thing. I mean, it's not new. It's been around for a
Sure.
while, but people go and they'll cut a t-shirt. They'll put it on somebody else. They'll cut it and they'll weave it. And I mean, it's going to be
Yep.
here a while.
Yeah, thrifting is not. It's not how it used to be when we were kids, and it was like a big deal. Well, when I was a kid, because I'm older than Jeff here. When I was a kid, and it was like, man, having the new thing with the sticker on it was the deal. That's the point. That is not the point anymore. The score of the cool thrifted thing is the point. Where's the heat, right? Where are you going to get the heat from? If you can get that from the thrift store, that's cool now. That's fine. So
Yep.
you have to not think about it that way. But it does mean some of us are going to get over our first run garment kind of feelings sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's Josh. Josh says this on that one. Less profit short term, long term pays off. I don't know. That's the hard part on this one. Melanie says love thrift. If you are pricing correctly for customer supplied garments, it doesn't matter where they come from. The only problem I have with it is this, and it might be unique to some of the situations I was in. I've had people bring in garments that were heinous, they were filthy, that I would not put on my machine. And I don't want to say this is bad, but I had a certain class of folks who were doing equestrian stuff, and I'm like, if it came right off your horse, I don't want it on my machine. If I can beat this thing with like a rug beater and out comes 2 pounds of dust from the New Mexico trails, I'm not throwing that on my very expensive embroidery machine. I'm sorry. Everything else, I've had no problem doing thrifted gear, especially stuff out of a thrift store generally is laundered. It's laundered en masse before it gets to you. But I can see a world in which if you're somebody who does laundry in your shop, there are people who have laundry facilities in their shops. You could even offer that and say, yeah, I'll bring it in, but you're going to pay this much and I'm going to launder everything too. Everything can be part of a profit center if you're clear about it with people before you start. But I'll say that's, like I said, that's my one drawback. I've done some rework on garments where I didn't want to touch them, let alone did I want to throw them on a machine.
Yeah.
You just got to make that stuff clear.
The bag comes in, it's got flies coming out of it.
Oh, we've had a couple. I had somebody literally where I took the now usually this is for digitizers, and so Jeff probably understands this. Somebody will bring you an old garment. Like I had a hat from a guy, and the first thing was I looked at the hat and thought, wow, this is a weird hat. It's got a real like an ombre thing going on where it's white toward the bottom and red at the top. What is this weird blank? And then I looked at it and I was like, that is all sweat. That is all sweat stains. The whole hat, embroidery, everything had changed color from the brim up. And I took pictures of this thing and I rocked back to the salesperson who brought it to me and sealed the bag up and put it on their desk. And I was like, you get to live with this thing. I took the pictures. We're good. I'll redraw this whole thing on my own time for you to not put that on my desk again. Anyway, so yeah, I think we've all had that experience, but I think it's less likely. People are less likely to do that now. And thrifted garments that somebody bought from thrift store, I haven't had as much of that. The only thing I have problems with that is when we're doing printing, it's different because there could be like you're using weird laundry stuff or softeners, and it may have problems with print adhesion or vinyl. Embroidery, hey, we're going to stab it. It's going to go through. It's going to stick. There's no problem with that. We're not going to have nearly the trouble. But yeah, print can be a little bit harder. All right, last thing here, we have a couple more people who jumped in. Just want to let them have their say on this one for sure. Mike says chenille combos on my drool list. Yes, I think it's a lot of us. It's on our drool list to do chenille combo machines. That's something that's really cool. And also, let's bring in Crystal says, I had a nasty hat my employers accepted for an order last week. I put gloves on so I didn't have to touch it. It was a stinky, sweaty, gross hat. Yeah, mine was Yaffle Coach hats. Sorry, Yaffle Coaches, not trying to be a jerk, but I had literally 5 in the same year that were like that from the same group of dudes, and I was like, "Every one of you, I know you want a new hat, and it's we want it to be exact as the last one. Just take the picture. We all have camera phones. Take a picture. Don't send me that hat, please." All right. So, any last words of wisdom you want to leave everybody with?
No, I don't have any wisdom. I just sit here and smile.
All right. Well, as we know, Jeff today is the talent. So thank you, Jeff. And I'm going to go ahead and cut us off on that. Won't be a funny cutoff, but happy to have you guys here and happy to have Jeff in with me. So that's it. Might have to replace Aaron.